Picture this, you're 18 years old, standing on a rooftop at midnight, holding a piece of paper that feels more binding than any contract you'll ever sign. No lawyers. No witnesses. Just ink, 2 signatures and the terrifying, beautiful certainty that you will never become the kind of man you've been taught to despise. What would you write on that paper? And more importantly, 17 years later, would you have kept your word? They met at 13 over something small. A borrowed pen that was never returned. It was the second week of secondary school, one of those heavy humid afternoons where ceiling fans just push warm air in slow, useless circles. The classroom smelled of chalk dust and freshly ironed uniforms, that particular scent of new beginnings pretending to be ordinary. Daniel had forgotten his pen. He sat there at his desk, the blank page in front of him suddenly feeling enormous. Malik had too. Daniel asked without looking up. Malik slid one across the desk without a word, not generously, not coldly, just easily, the way people move when kindness hasn't yet been complicated by self-interest. By the end of term they were inseparable. Not because they were similar, but because they were not. Have you ever had a friendship like that, where the very differences between you made you feel more whole? Daniel was deliberate. Observant. He thought before he spoke, and when he finally did speak, his words landed with quiet weight. Even as a teenager, he carried a seriousness that teachers mistook for maturity, not knowing it was really something rarer, conviction. An early stubborn sense that the world had a shape, and that shape mattered. Malik was magnetic. Quick to laugh. Quicker to adapt. The kind of boy who could walk into any room and within minutes know who mattered and exactly how to move around them. Not manipulative, not yet, just attuned. Like a tuning fork that resonated with whatever frequency the room was running on. Where Daniel saw structure, Malik saw opportunity. Where Malik saw shortcuts, Daniel saw consequences. And somehow, impossibly perfectly, that friction became balance. They grew together the way boys do, through shared homework, shared punishments, shared ambitions whispered under streetlights when curfew stretched past comfortable. They talked about money before they understood it. They talked about success before they defined it. They promised each other half-jokingly at first and then with increasing seriousness that they would not become ordinary. In their final year of high school, ambition stopped being a vague feeling and sharpened into something with edges. University acceptance letters arrived like verdicts. Daniel earned admission into a respected business program in a city known for discipline and quiet prestige. A place where corporations grew in glass towers and your reputation was the only currency that compounded with age. Malik received his offer from a faster city, louder, wealthier, unpredictable. A place where startups were born over breakfast and fortunes reversed before dinner. A city that didn't care where you came from, only where you were willing to go. They celebrated. And then reality arrived, the way it always does, quietly and without an invitation. They would be leaving each other. Different cities. Different futures. Different gravitational fields. On graduation day, beneath rented tents and borrowed folding chairs, surrounded by proud families and the mechanical click of cameras, the weight of departure sat between them like an unspoken question neither was brave enough to ask first. Would they become strangers? That night, they climbed to the rooftop of Daniel's family home. It wasn't cinematic. There was no dramatic skyline. Just modest buildings pressed against each other, scattered lights and distant traffic humming like a city talking in its sleep. The concrete was still warm from the day's heat. The air smelled faintly of fried food from somewhere below. They sat on the floor with a notebook between them. The future felt larger than the sky above it. What if we change? Malik asked suddenly. His voice was casual but his eyes weren't. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He was looking out at the city the way someone looks at a photograph before they put it away. Everyone changes, he said finally. That's what I mean. Malik leaned back on his hands, staring upward. What if we become those men we used to laugh at? The ones who shook hands and smiled, and then quietly rewrote the terms. The ones who said it's just business in the same tone they might say it's just weather. The ones who looked their younger selves in the eye, and called naivete by the kinder name of inexperience. Think about the men you swore you'd never become. Can you still name them clearly? Silence stretched between them, comfortable and uncomfortable at once. Daniel opened the notebook. Then we hold ourselves accountable, he said. To who? Daniel tore out a clean page. The sound of it, clean, final, cut through the night air. To this. He began writing. Not goals. Not dreams. Standards. The difference mattered. Goals are things you reach for. Standards are things you refuse to drop below. By 35. We will build success honestly. We will not cut corners for speed. We will guard our names carefully. We will choose friends who elevate us. We will never justify becoming men we once criticized. Malik watched the ink glide across the paper. The scratching sound felt permanent, the way few things do when you're 18. Add one more, Malik said quietly. Daniel paused. Add that we'll meet again at 35. Same date. No excuses. There was something in Malik's voice when he said it, not sentimentality but something more fragile. Something that understood, even then, that time was not their ally. Daniel nodded. He wrote it. They signed their names at the bottom, young signatures, still finding their final form. No witnesses. No ceremony. No applause. Just ink. The city below carried on, completely unaware of the contract being formed above it. They folded the paper carefully, twice, then once more. Keep it, Malik said. You sure? If I keep it, I'll lose it. He said it lightly. But something in both of them knew it wasn't a joke. Daniel slipped it into the back of his wallet. The ink was still slightly wet. They sat there longer than necessary, long past the point where conversation had stopped and something else, something quieter and more necessary, had taken over. Neither spoke about fear. Neither admitted doubt. They were 18. They believed character was permanent, like bone, not like skin. They believed conviction was immune to environment. They believed ambition and integrity would grow side by side, without tension, forever. A train passed somewhere in the distance. The sound lingered long after the train disappeared. The next morning they left for different cities. And time began doing what it always does. Reshaping certainty. Quietly. Drop a comment. What's one promise your younger self made that you're still keeping, or wish you'd kept? Before we dive back in, can I ask for a quick favor? This episode wasn't generated by an algorithm. It was carefully crafted, from the script to the voice, the edits and the sound, every detail designed to immerse you in this journey. Supporting the channel doesn't cost you a thing, but it truly makes a difference. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please hit like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next adventure we explore together. I'd love to hear from you. Share where you're tuning in from, your city or country, in the comments. I personally read each one, and will be selecting a few for shout-outs in the next video. Now let's get back to our story. There's a specific kind of loneliness that only ambitious people know. It's not the loneliness of isolation. It's the loneliness of sitting in a fluorescent-lit office at 11 p.m. while everyone else seems to be accelerating past you, and wondering if the thing you're protecting is actually worth protecting. Daniel was about to find out. The city Daniel moved to did not welcome him. It evaluated him. Tall buildings of steel and glass reflected back a version of him that looked unfinished. Everything moved quickly but without chaos, with the particular efficiency of a machine that has been running so long it no longer needs to explain itself. People walked with direction. Conversations ended with deliverables. Even the air felt structured, as if the city itself had signed a lease agreement with ambition and intended to collect. He arrived with 2 suitcases, a scholarship that covered tuition but little else, and a quiet, almost stubborn belief that discipline would be enough. It wasn't. University was harder than he expected. Not intellectually, but psychologically. Many of his classmates had advantages that didn't come from talent, advantages that arrived with last names and family introductions, internships offered over dinner rather than through job boards. He listened more than he spoke. He studied in libraries until they turned off the lights. He took part-time work that was repetitive, underpaid, and exhausting in a way that ambition doesn't include in its promotional materials. Have you ever worked that hard and wondered if anyone would ever actually see you? Temptation, when it came, didn't arrive dramatically. It came disguised as practicality. Third year. A classmate with an expression of bored helpfulness. Group project. Just put your name on it. We'll adjust some data, nothing serious. Daniel knew what adjust meant. The pact surfaced that night, not like a thunderclap but the way a song returns from somewhere deep in memory. Faint. Unmistakable. I'll do my part, he replied. He submitted his section honestly. The project received an average grade. He watched others celebrate higher scores and sat with his mediocre result and something harder to name, a kind of quiet, uncomfortable self-respect. Average earned is heavier than excellence borrowed. After graduation, the city became less forgiving. He wore the same suit to every interview, carefully maintained, carefully pressed. Each rejection email began identically, unfortunately. He began to genuinely question whether integrity was simply invisible in a world that rewarded the confident presentation of results over their honest substance. But eventually he secured a junior analyst role at a mid-sized logistics firm. Fluorescent lighting. Beige walls. Nothing glamorous. But enough. He worked quietly. He observed before speaking. He built spreadsheets that were clean and precise, the way careful people build things, knowing that the people who notice quality are usually the ones whose opinion matters. When he spoke in meetings, people had learned to wait for it. His manager noticed. Not immediately. But consistently. The first real test arrived 3 years in, not as scandal but as something far more insidious, normalization. A supplier contract. Minor discrepancies. Nothing explosive. His supervisor leaned across the desk one evening, voice low. We'll smooth this. It's small. Daniel stared at the numbers. Small meant deliberate misreporting. Small was how large compromises always begin. It's still inaccurate, he said carefully. The supervisor sighed, the particular sigh of someone who has made their peace with something and resents being reminded that peace was a negotiation. You're young. Learn which battles matter. Daniel requested a formal review. For weeks, a new kind of silence followed him through those halls. He was no longer the easy junior analyst. He was principled, said in the flat tone people use when they mean something else entirely. But the internal audit confirmed his findings. The supervisor was transferred quietly. No applause followed. No one said well done. But something shifted in how he was perceived. Not liked. Not yet promoted. But trusted. And trust, he was beginning to understand, was impossible to counterfeit. Years layered themselves like sediment. While peers upgraded apartments and cars, Daniel invested cautiously. Chose his associations deliberately. His mentor once told him something that found permanent residence somewhere behind his sternum. Character is compound interest. Slow. Invisible. Powerful. Sit with that. How much have you been investing? There were lonely seasons, watching others accelerate, watching social media perform wins he couldn't yet claim. Nights he questioned whether the pact was wisdom, or just the anxiety of a young man who didn't know better preserved in ink. But peace began replacing urgency. Not as defeat. As clarity. By 32 he was promoted to operations director, earned, not gifted. By 35 he held equity in the company. Not explosive wealth but stable ownership. The kind that doesn't require constant defending. One evening, organizing old documents, he found it. The folded paper. Edges worn soft. Ink slightly faded, the way important things sometimes appear, diminished on the surface, unchanged underneath. He unfolded it carefully. Build honest success. Guard your name. Choose your company wisely. Meet again at 35. He checked the date. It was close. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling, not triumphant, not proud. Just aware. The path had not been glamorous. It had been heavy, slow, and often completely unseen. But he had not betrayed the ink. Outside, the city lights reflected against his window. They no longer intimidated him. They no longer evaluated him. They mirrored him. He folded the paper again, more gently this time, like something that had survived long enough to deserve gentleness. 17 years had passed. And for the first time in years he genuinely wondered, who had Malik become? Here's the thing no one tells you about success that arrives too easily: it doesn't feel wrong. It feels like confirmation. It feels like the world finally seeing what you always knew was true. And by the time you realize what you paid for it, the price was already gone. The city Malik moved to did not evaluate him. It rewarded him. From the moment he arrived, the noise, the glass towers beside half-finished construction, the billboards that changed before you could memorize them, he felt something click into place like a key in a lock he hadn't known he was carrying. Where Daniel's city was structured, Malik's was hungry. And Malik was hungry too. University felt less like a challenge, and more like a map to be read quickly. He joined circles early: business clubs, investment forums, committees that offered less actual leadership than visibility. He understood something instinctively that others spent years learning: in this city being seen was half the work. He learned names, remembered details, made himself useful in the specific way that gets remembered, not through desperation but through attunement. He learned how to speak in rooms where speaking well was its own form of capital. And he learned something that would serve him brilliantly for a decade, and then quietly begin to cost him everything. Confidence often passes for competence. And he was confident. The first compromise didn't feel like one. During an internship at a growing investment firm, a senior associate leaned over his shoulder, close enough that Malik could smell expensive aftershave and the confidence of someone who has never questioned whether the rules applied to them. Adjust projections upward slightly. We're not lying. Just optimistic. Malik hesitated. 1 beat. 2. Is it accurate? It's persuasive. The room buzzed with the urgency of people who believe speed is itself a virtue. Malik adjusted the numbers. Nothing dramatic. Just assumptions stretched, the statistical equivalent of standing on tiptoe. The firm secured the client. The associate clapped him on the back. Welcome to the real world. And Malik told himself something that would echo through the next decade like a stone dropped in a well, its sound arriving long after the stone disappeared. Everyone does this. The pact did not surface that night. It remained folded in memory like something you mean to deal with and eventually stop thinking about. After graduation, his ascent was swift in the way that makes good sense at the time and complicated sense later. Income multiplied. He upgraded apartments before his furniture had settled. Bought a car that made parking attendants straighten up, and he noticed that detail filed it somewhere, understood that he liked it more than he was comfortable admitting. His phone rang constantly. But so did invitations. Dinners with entrepreneurs who measured ethics by margins. Partnerships with men who described regulations as obstacles rather than safeguards. He noticed small irregularities, side payments, undisclosed risks, creative reporting dressed as optimism. But he also noticed results. Bonuses. Recognition. The addictive feeling of moving forward. Each time something felt misaligned, someone older would say it. This is how the world works. And slowly, so slowly it wasn't a decision so much as a drift, that phrase became insulation. Imagine you're in that room. The deal is good. The numbers aren't quite right. Everyone around you is comfortable. What do you do? At 28, he closed his first major independent deal. His name appeared in industry publications. Even Daniel's name crossed his mind, a brief warm flash of the rooftop, the notebook, the ink. He considered reaching out. Told himself he'd call later. Later became years. He befriended a senior partner known for aggressive expansion, a man who admired Malik's instinct the way someone admires a more polished version of their own younger ruthlessness. You have instinct, the partner said over drinks that arrived without being ordered. Don't let small ethics slow you. Small ethics. The phrase lingered strangely. Malik laughed it off. But when larger deals surfaced, acquisitions built on concealed liabilities, restructurings where the benefit was obscured by paperwork, he participated. He approved. He signed. He benefited. He justified each step with the layered reasoning available to brilliant people who have stopped asking certain questions. It's temporary. It's strategic. It's survival. He was not stealing. He was optimizing. And optimization paid extraordinarily well. By 31, he was wealthier than he had imagined on that rooftop at 18. But something else had begun to surface. Trust. Or rather, its systematic absence. Partnerships here were built on mutual advantage, which looks identical to loyalty until the advantage shifts. When one associate was investigated for misconduct, the group's response was swift and bloodless. No defense. No calls. The mun was simply erased. Liability, someone said, casually. Malik felt a brief chill. Then moved on. But the chill stayed, somewhere low in his chest, like a draft from a window you can't find. The collapse didn't explode. It tightened. Regulatory attention. Questions at first. Then emails. Then the specific silence of people consulting lawyers before returning calls. The senior partner became gradually less available. Responsibility that practiced movement of blame from where it originated to where it was most conveniently located, began redirecting toward Malik. He reviewed documents late at night alone, seeing clearly what he had helped construct. Not fraud, technically. Something harder to defend, fragility. Structures dependent on concealment, built on the assumption that no one would ever look too carefully. When formal investigations began, alliances shifted with the precision of something rehearsed. The partner resigned. Personal reasons. Malik was left explaining. Defending. Navigating a landscape that had reconfigured itself around his exposure overnight. Reputation erodes faster than it builds. Clients withdrew. Invitations disappeared. His network went quiet in a way that had texture. Specific. Deliberate. Unmistakable. By 34 he was displaced, removed from leadership, compensation reduced to numbers he hadn't thought about in years. The car was sold first. Then the apartment exchanged for something smaller. A place that did not overlook the skyline but was overlookable from it. Liability. He understood the word differently now. It had weight. It had a face. It was his. One evening, clearing storage, he found a notebook. The rooftop surfaced instantly. The warm concrete. Daniel's handwriting moving across the page in the lamplight. He unfolded the pact. Build honest success. Do not cut corners for speed. Guard your name. Choose your company wisely. Meet again at 35. He sat on the floor and read each line as if it had been written that morning. He did not remember the moment he had abandoned it, because there had been no moment. No dramatic decision. No conscious betrayal. Just increments. Small negotiations. Tiny adjustments in what he was willing to explain away. He had not torn the promise. He had diluted it. One small compromise at a time, until what remained was too weak to hold anything together. He had become someone his 18-year-old self would question. Not hate, but question. And somehow, because he still remembered who that boy was, that felt worse. He checked the date. The reunion was close. For the first time in years, he felt something that had nothing to do with money or strategy. He felt unsure about facing Daniel. The city outside his smaller window still buzzed. But it no longer sounded like momentum. It sounded indifferent, the way cities always sound when you stop being useful to them. He folded the paper slowly. Not out of pride. Out of recognition. Have you ever looked back at who you were at 18 and felt like a stranger to that person? Drop it in the comments. There's a kind of reunion that terrifies you not because you failed, but because someone who knew you before you made your choices is about to see the whole of what those choices built. And you already know whether you're proud of it or not. The question is whether you'll be honest about which one it is. The cafe was quiet in the late afternoon. Not fashionable. Just steady, wooden tables worn smooth by use, soft lighting that asked nothing of the people sitting under it. Daniel arrived first. Chose a table near the window. Phone face down, not as a gesture, just a habit of attention. Hands on the table. Breathing evenly. 17 years. He did not feel nervous. But he felt aware, the particular awareness of someone about to encounter evidence of a life they chose not to live. The door opened. Malik stepped in. For a moment they simply looked at each other. Just the strange experience of seeing someone you haven't seen in 17 years, the way time has touched a familiar face, the way the person inside has shifted without quite disappearing. Daniel's posture was grounded, unhurried. Calm without being cold. Malik still carried presence but quieter now. Less sharp at the edges. The confidence remained, but it no longer entered a room ahead of him. They embraced. The measured kind, the embrace of men who understand distance. They sat. A pause. Not awkward. Just full. You look well, Malik said. I am. You. Malik gave a small nod. I'm learning. Daniel didn't press. He understood that learning from Malik at 35 meant something very different from what it would have meant at 18. They ordered coffee. The years unfolded slowly, cities, industries, transitions. Daniel spoke plainly about the slow promotions, the steady growth. Malik spoke carefully about the rise. The deals. The restructuring. He did not dramatize the fall. It lived in the spaces between his sentences. At one point, Malik looked out the window at the ordinary afternoon, continuing without interest in what was being said inside this particular cafe. You ever think about that night? He asked. Yes. Did you actually keep it? Most days, Daniel said. The honesty in that answer carried more weight than certainty would have. Not yes perfectly always, but most days, which is the honest answer for any commitment maintained across 17 years in a world designed to negotiate you out of it. Malik let out a quiet breath. I didn't break it. Not intentionally. Daniel nodded once. I know. The erosion was predictable. It didn't require villains. Malik reached into his jacket and placed the folded paper on the table between them. The edges were worn thin, almost translucent at the creases. Daniel unfolded it carefully. The ink had faded but remained readable. 2 signatures. Young handwriting. Firm strokes. Uncomplicated belief. Build honest success. Do not cut corners. Guard your name. Choose your company wisely. Meet again at 35. Outside, traffic moved. Someone laughed across the room. Inside, time folded in on itself. Malik ran his thumb lightly over his own signature, the motion of someone touching something they're not sure they deserve to touch. We thought character was permanent, he said. Daniel shook his head gently. It isn't. It's maintained, Daniel said. That word hung between them. Like discipline. Like integrity. Like everything that matters and nothing that is automatic. At first everything worked. Faster than I imagined. I thought that meant we were wrong, that the world ran on different rules than we'd written down. We weren't wrong. A faint exhale, the sound of someone who has finally stopped arguing with evidence. I kept telling myself I'd correct course once I was secure. And a long pause. Security built itself around compromise. By the time I looked up, I'd been building on the wrong foundation for years. The structure looked solid. It just wasn't mine. No accusation from Daniel. No quiet superiority. Just listening. That made it heavier. The cafe had grown quieter. Light shifted to something amber and gentle. You're stable now? Malik asked. Yes. Peaceful. Daniel actually considered the word. Yes. Malik nodded slowly. That's the part one underestimated. Not the money. Not the visibility. The peace. The absence of anxiety when you sign your name. The confidence that no unexpected email can undo what you've built. The freedom of having nothing to hide. When's the last time you genuinely felt that? Think about it. Daniel folded the paper and slid it back across the table. You still have time, he said. Malik looked up. For what? To maintain. Not a lecture. Just the quiet offering of possibility from one mun to another across a table covered in 17 years of evidence. You ever resent the slow path? Malik asked. Sometimes. But only briefly. And now? Daniel looked around the cafe, the steady light, the ordinary calm, the entirely sufficient scene of his life continuing. No. They did not compare numbers or outcomes. The competition had ended years ago, not with a winner and loser but with consequence arriving differently for each of them. They were no longer boys measuring ambition by velocity. They were men measuring it by alignment. Outside, the air was cooler. City lights beginning to appear. 17 years, Malik said. 17, Daniel agreed. They shook hands. It held a moment longer than necessary. Next time we don't wait for a deadline, Malik said. Daniel allowed the smallest smile. Next time we don't need one. They walked in opposite directions. Not estranged. Not identical. Just aware. Later, Daniel placed the pack back in his drawer. No framing. No ceremony. Returned to its place in the ordinary fabric of his life. Across the city, Malik placed his copy in a new folder, labeled Not Memory. Reference. Not as something to mourn. As something to work toward. The ink had not prevented change. But it had recorded intention. And intention, even faded, carries weight. At 18 they believed ink made words permanent. At 35 they understood something deeper. Ink is only as strong as the hand that honors it. Character is not decided in a single moment on a rooftop, but in the quiet repeated choice to remain aligned with who you said you were when no one is watching, when the compromise is so small that no one but you would ever know. That's where the real promise is kept or broken. Not in the signing, but in the living. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what promise are you still keeping?